I noticed the story too because you taught me how to notice a story. And so that's where my book is coming along and I'm finding my own stories and stuff. And it's pretty cool. So
Well, you get the three boys together and it's over.
Yeah, but I said more than that.
well, tell me, remind me.
Well, you brought it with you into our marriage.
Well, but John learned all about 2030 the hard way as a missionary.
I brought it into our marriage and the craziest things happened to us too because we're looking for it. That's simply how
Well,
it is.
crazy things happen just because you go out the door, not because you're looking for it.
Well, yeah. I mean, things that happen to you that would happen to other bus drivers, I'm sure they would just roll their eyes to it and not go home and tell it and not remember it. So that's how you remembered it as you come home. And I would look forward to your stories. That's how I could get through a school day. What happened to Dad? What's happening right now?
All right.
So,
Introduce.
oh man.
Well, how do we save these?
Don't worry about the technical side. I've got it.
He'll show us.
Just talk.
Okay.
Introduce Ludi. You got this.
So can this be our practice run just in case? And just pretend it's a practice run and then it'll be good. And, we
And then
won't
if
have
it
to redo
works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Then we can go back and be like, did we have a lot of empty spaces? Did we have a lot of energy? You know, because you'll be tired after this, I'm sure.
I'm confident you guys will do great. You got it.
Okay. All right. Oh, is it going? Okay. Is it going?
Yeah.
All right. Welcome to our podcast. This is called Life at 2030. Why, Dad?
Because that's where we live, 2030.
Exactly. What were you saying earlier about your father-in-law?
Oh, well, I was just saying that life started at 2030 when I met your mother. And that's another story, but her brother had died, and I asked her if she was going to BYU, and she said yes, and I made the mistake of saying that I just got back from a mission. So about the fourth time I went down to see her parents, her father and I and her mother and her and I were sitting around the kitchen table, and her father looked at me in the eye and he said, "Well, when you going to bury my daughter? Ain't you got no biological urges?" And there is no answer to that question. No good answer. You could say
true.
yes and you could say no, but either way, you're done.
What do you even say? That is
I
funny.
didn't answer the question, but I did marry her 3 months later.
You guys, this is the reason we're doing this podcast, because just in common speaking with Dad, these stories come out all the time. Everyone has given my dad the charge. You need to write a book. You need to write a book. Your stories are amazing. And we don't know if the book's ever going to happen because of the way Dad tells stories, which is incredible just in person. And we want to document these and keep them forever. And also, Dad, you have a gift for telling these great stories and finding the stories, and you've taught me as well. My name is Julie, and I'm a mom of 4, and very happily married to a crazy man. And I'm Paul's daughter, and he is the storyteller, and I'd like to call myself the storyteller's daughter. So, introduce yourself, Dad.
Well, I'm Paul. I got married in 1974, and we have 6 children, 3 boys, 3 girls. We have 19 grandchildren. 18 are living. 1 passed away at birth. I drove city bus for 38 years. I've served my church for a long time, and I have great experiences from both. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this, was so that I could log these stories for my grandkids and my kids. And if anybody else wants to come along for the journey, we're okay with that.
And it's a crazy journey, that is for sure.
And these stories don't find me. I mean, I don't find them, they find me. So if you've ever ridden public transit, you'll know what I'm talking about.
And if you ever hang out with this guy, this craziness follows you as well. There was one time we were leaving 7-Eleven. We noticed a lady left her purse on the back of her car. What would we do, Dad?
Well, we chased her down and she thought we were trying to kill her. But finally she recognized us. We chased her up and down the streets watching the purse sitting on her back bumper because we knew the lady. And once she recognized who we were, she stopped the car and pulled over and was so grateful that we had chased her down.
Yeah, and it stayed on for 2 miles.
It stayed on for a long time.
We were ready to just pull over and grab it because we knew where she lived and we would take it home to her, but it was more fun to chase her down and freak her out.
So you have to watch for opportunities. They come every day.
They do, and I thought it was just around the bus for you, but that wasn't the case. You have so many stories that are just funny, faith promoting. The church that I grew up in with you, the stories alone, just for the patrons there and our streets that we grew up on, even just you going to the store, you would find a story and just laugh so hard. And so today's episode, we're going to start off really cool. These are our favorite, these are Dad's top 3 funniest bus stories ever. And my brothers and sisters and I did not believe that Dad had this craziness follow him. We said, no, there's no way these stories are happening to you. These are too strange. Until one day, my brothers and I were on the bus and we saw it in action and our jaws hit the ground just going, what just happened? Poor Dad. You will hear that story. Do you want to tell it? It's not part of our top 3, but this is like a bonus, right?
Sure. My kids wouldn't believe some of the things that happened on the bus. So I realized that there was no reason to continue or write a book, because things that you got to realize that a certain population rides the bus because they're on medication or because they can't drive or because they have issues. And those are my favorite people, and I recognize every person who gets on my bus as a human being, even if they have issues. And occasionally I have a sciatic nerve problem. And so my kids who were riding the bus with me that day knew that my sciatica was bothering me. Sorry, my phone beeped. And so as I was driving, a young lady got on and sat in the seat right next to me. And she started in about how her sciatica was killing her and how the pain shoots from the top of her head to the bottom of her toes. And as she's discussing that, I have to hit the brake and the accelerator pedal. And every time I do, it gets worse and worse because she's talking about how bad her sciatica hurts. And that was probably one of the longest trips I've ever had on the bus, but my kids were laughing because they thought it was funny.
Yeah, she was in a red jogging suit and she was kind of stretched out on her seat where her legs were stretched out because she was in pain. And as she's describing this, Dad is shaking his leg. And we know he's in so much pain and feeling it in real time as she's describing it. And we felt so bad, but sorry, Dad, it was so funny. I'm sorry. That was the best. So we did start believing your stories, saying, yeah, this really does happen. And I realized, you know what? When I get home from school, Dad is going to have a story to tell. And I can't wait to hear at the dinner table, hey, what happened today? Tell us a story. So whenever we would have guests come over and Dad would start telling his stories, it always went to his bus stories. And so my very, very favorite story that I'm going to make Dad tell is the imaginary buddy. Go for it, Dad.
Well, there are lots of people who ride the bus with multiple personalities, and some of them have imaginary friends. But there's this one gentleman, he had a friend who he paid for. So this gentleman would get on the bus and pay senior fare. Then he would pay full fare for his imaginary buddy. And they would go back in the bus and they would talk. And one day I was busy, it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I dropped this gentleman off at 60th South and State Street. And as he left the bus, I hurried, shut the door, and I was going to leave. But the funniest part of this story was the little old lady had gotten on with 3 pair of glasses. Obvious to me that she was just got back from the eye doctor. And so she was sitting in the first seat, and she would take 1 pair off, look around, take that pair off, put another one on. So she was testing the new glasses. And so this gentleman got off. I shut the door. He turned around and started screaming at me and hit the door. So I opened the door, and he said, "You shut my buddy in the door." Well, I knew there was no explaining to this gentleman that I couldn't see his buddy. So I just pulled the park brake, and I got out of my seat, and I walked down the steps, and I picked up the imaginary guy, and I brushed him off. And I turned to the gentleman, and I said, "Your friend says he's okay." He says, "Well, don't let it happen again." I said, I'll watch out for him next time. I'm sorry. So he turned around, and he was happy, and they walked down the street talking to each other. And so I got about a block down the road, and I noticed this little old lady was putting her glasses on and taking them off really fast. And I wondered what was going on with her. So finally she turned to me and she said, "Sir?" And I said, "Yeah." And she says, "Was there anybody there?" And I said, "No, ma'am, there was nobody there. That gentleman has an invisible friend." And she's like, "Whew, I thought these new glasses didn't work."
Oh, no.
So, I mean, on the bus, every person that gets on is a story.
They really are.
And they have a life, and there's something about them that's unique. And if you start watching for these opportunities, you'll learn.
You can always find a funny story.
Always a funny story.
Did that not faze you that happened? When that happened, what were you thinking?
Well, I had seen the gentleman several times, so I knew him. And I knew that there was no way to argue your way out of it.
Right.
So the only thing to do was to appease the invisible guy and make sure he's okay. And as long as he's okay, then the guy's going to think we're good.
Because you didn't want any trouble. I hear you. But that's so funny. That's
And you
my
have
favorite.
to honor the invisible guy because he thinks he's there.
Really?
And that's all
He
that
does.
matters.
He knows he's there. My next favorite story was when you were, well, I don't know how long you were driving, the Hill Air Force Base story. How long had you been driving?
I'd been driving about a year. And it was a holiday. And it was really foggy. And it was my first time on Hill Air Force Base. And I only had 3 people on the bus, and I didn't know how to get off the base. And so when the last guy got off the bus, I asked him how to get off the base. And he said, "You go to the next stop sign, turn left, and it'll take you to the west gate and out onto the freeway." So I drove, and I came to a gate, and there was a guard shack, but nobody was in the guard shack. And it was really foggy. So I continued, and I got out onto a road that had all kinds of lines, and it was a really big road. Suddenly I looked behind me, and there was 2 Jeeps with guys with guns.
Oh.
And they stopped me and told me to follow them. And we followed back to where the guard shack was. And there was a guy in the guard shack, and they went and talked to him. And apparently he'd gone to the bathroom and left the guard shack unattended. But it was a holiday. I guess he thought that was okay. But then they went back, and we had to find the last guy that I let off so they could ask him what his instructions were to me. So we followed his instructions and come to find out there was construction on the base. And someone had taken the stop sign out and laid it on the ground.
Oh.
So I had made it to the runway. And so they escorted me off the base. And the next time I went to Hill Air Force Base, one of my supervisors was there to meet me.
Oh, man.
And escort me through the base so that I didn't make it to the runway again.
They razzed you at work so much about
people
that.
at work wanted to know if I was trying to get the bus to take off. But it wasn't my fault, and I think the guard got in more trouble than I did.
Probably. And with all the fog and
But
everything.
these guys were carrying big guns and they meant business, so.
That would be scary too, but that's really funny that you were trying to take the bus for a ride in the air.
Trying to take it off.
That's awesome. I love that story. Now we have it forever. So my last one today is, I'm going to let you pick because nothing will be left behind. So you get to pick either John Wayne or the teenagers.
The teenagers are probably my favorite story. Everybody knows teenagers. They know it all. They're indestructible. And I used to go by West High School, and I used to drop off a lot of kids from the west side at West High School. And this one day I picked up 4 Polynesian boys, and, I talked to them all. I always say hi. The 4th boy that got on didn't want to pay his fare. And so I told him, no problem. You can either pay your fare or you can get off. And he wanted to show his buddies that he was a tough guy. He says, well, I guess I'll just shoot you. And I looked him in the eye and I said, well, I have 6 kids. 4 of them are teenagers. You just be doing me a favor, so shoot. And he looked at me with this look on his face and he says, you're more messed up than I am. And so his buddies said, just pay the man. So he paid me the fare. And him and I got to be really good buddies. I mean, him and I got to be friends. And most of the kids there I got to know as friends because I always said hi when they got on. I didn't ignore them as people. I acknowledged that they were human beings and said hi to them. One day these 4 were being a real pain in the back of the bus. And, they're just acting up, but they were sticking their heads out the window. And so I walked back to them, and they quieted down a little bit, and I just looked at them and I said, you're a prime example of why some species eat their young.
Oh, no. What?
And I turned around and I went back to the front of the bus and sat down and we left. And I saw these 4 boys, they're teenagers, and they're discussing amongst themselves what I just said. Well, it kept them busy trying to figure out what I'd said. They didn't stick their heads out the window anymore. But when they got off, one of them turned to me and said, you dissed us, huh? And I said, that's going to have to be for you to figure out. Go home and tell your dad and mom what I said.
I love that. It sounds like all 3 of these stories were definitely kind of intense when they happened, but you managed to deal with the situations in a really awesome way with each story. And then you got to come home and you twisted it to where it was so funny. And that would be scary to actually be with you on the bus when you went on the Hill Air Force Base runway, or a kid threatening to shoot you. But then you come home and you protect us from all of that and make it funny. And those are our favorite stories now. I love that. I love the talent you have is incredible. So we definitely have more stories coming for you guys, for us to document. And it's not just bus stories. Believe me, we have so many bus stories and we're going to get to all of those. We're going to discover more things just about growing up and life lessons and everything, because like Dad said, he was a bishop for 10 years. He had a lot of people come up to him, even outside of the church, just at work, saying, Bishop, I need to talk. And he has so much advice and counsel, and I'm so excited to get into this. So seriously, guys, welcome to Life at 2030.